Thank you all for coming. My name's Norman Thomas. I'm chairing this inquiry, as we're calling it, not the Forde Inquiry. I'm sure everybody here probably knows, but the Forde Inquiry, the official Forde Inquiry, was into a leaked report, which appeared round about in the spring of 2020. And the leaked report was, in theory, an internal Labour Party report that was meant to show that the Labour Party, or show evidence to the European Human Rights Commission to try to prove that the Labour Party wasn't anti-Semitic. And so what they did in the report was to show that the leadership of the party, or to give evidence to the leadership of the party, was trying its darndest to do to carry out disciplinary action against anyone who is anti-Semitic. But in the process, the report showed lots of very interesting things about what the bureaucracy of the party appeared to be doing. Obviously, there's a lot of quite provocative material there about what the bureaucrats in the Labour Party were up to. What I would say right at the beginning in this meeting is that we have to be very careful about quoting anything from the report that is about individuals, named individuals, that shows them in a bad light, because a lot of these people will not be shy about taking legal action if they think they can do it. So obviously, if we have speakers here who are talking about themselves named in the report and they want to talk about their own cases, then that's different. But talking about other individuals who are named in the report is not a safe thing to do, and not something that we want to do. I mean, my opinion is that it's the principles that we're talking about in this report anyway, or that they seem to show, the sort of terrible state that the Labour Party's internal processes were in. And that's what basically the report seems to do in a most horrendous way. Since announcing this inquiry, we've been deluged with people sending us more information. There are people who are sending us information that they sent to the Forde Inquiry, obviously very frustrated that the inquiry hasn't reported. And obviously that's one of the main motivations of what we're up to, is that the Forde was supposed to report a long time ago. It's been over a year since it was commissioned in May. And it still hasn't reported. It was supposed to have reported various times. Up to last Christmas was the time they were supposed to be reporting, and then an announcement was made which said that Forde thought that, or he'd been told that, his report might conflict with inquiries that the Information Commissioner's Office was making, and that therefore he would not report until the Information Commissioner's Office had done its report. Now, obviously, to most people, this would seem to be total craziness, because it ties the report to another report, which may or may not ever come out. So it's a way of kicking the can down an infinite road. It's very obviously, you could argue that the report could basically redact anything that was thought to be infringing information protection laws, etc., etc. So that's a complete nonsense. Anyway, tonight we're going to hear from various speakers who've either submitted things to the Forde report, or might have submitted things to the Forde report, or are also named in the leaked report itself. So if they're named in the leaked report itself, they've obviously got something important to say. We do wish, that the official report had come out a long time ago, but, we don't hold out any hopes of it ever coming out anytime soon. Right, we've got a number of speakers tonight. I won't try to introduce them all at one go, but I will introduce the first one, who is Graham Bash. Graham Bash is a very well-known activist in left-wing circles. He's a member of many different left-wing organizations. And everything that he says tonight, if you want to have more information about it, you can read more about it in the publication Labour Briefing, which he is contributed to and works on. and has made it his life's work for a very long time. So, Graham, are you ready to talk to us tonight?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, Graham. Okay. Go ahead.
Here goes, comrades. Martin Forde. I have been a party member for 52 years. I'm an officer of Jewish Voice for Labour and the Labour Representation Committee. I've been an editorial board member of Labour Briefing for over 40 years. This is my evidence. The leaked report alleged appalling examples of Labour Party head office working against the party at the 2017 election and gave examples of shocking racism. You need to know that this is the tip of the iceberg. The poison was not and is not just at head office. It exists throughout the party machinery and in a number of regional offices. Take my party in South Thanet. Region has denied us access to our members for years now. We've had our chair, Norman Thomas, suspended for months after he allowed our GC to debate a resolution demanding the reinstatement of the whip to Jeremy Corbyn, a resolution submitted by me. We've had our secretary suspended, then expelled. Her crime, having the appalling temerity to tweet good luck to Chris Williamson when she learned of his decision to leave the party. Her successor as acting secretary was almost immediately suspended. We've had a candidate for Kent County Council suspended after disagreements with regional office and only reinstated after the selection was completed. We've had attempts by region to rule our resolutions out of order. But South Thanet is not an isolated example, as I'm sure we'll find out tonight. It is typical of so many parties up and down the country. East Ham and West Ham parties shut down. AGM stitched up in Streatham and Bristol. The imposition of a shortlist for Labour's candidate for Liverpool Mayor, excluding the left-wing black front runner. The exclusion of candidates for West of England Mayor. National Party interference in the selection of local candidates in Sandwell. A councillor in Derby suspended for saying Prince Philip was a racist. At least 16 members suspended in Peterborough, including 9 sitting councillors. A comrade in Suffolk suspended, then reinstated for having the symbol of a clenched fist on his Twitter account. The right-wing parliamentary candidate in the Hartlepool by-election imposed ditto Batley and Spen. The party in Scotland under right-wing management near to terminal decline, with exclusions of democratically selected candidates for the Scottish Parliament. Regional interference and the suspension of the AGM in Bath. Black members excluded and marginalised. Resolutions ruled out of order. Party members suspended and expelled. Even talking about the witch hunt can get you witch hunted. Now, these are just a few of the headlines, all with their own story, but with a common thread. Shutting down freedom of speech, silencing members on their refusal to accept the disciplinary actions against Jeremy and so many more members. Attempts to stop members criticising David Evans or putting motions of no confidence in Keir Starmer, of challenging the EHRC report, of allowing parties to affiliate to Jewish Voice for Labour, supporting bike rides for Palestine or donating to food banks. The list goes on, but the theme is to silence dissent. The lifeblood of our party is ebbing away. And in the meantime, there is a growing resistance to the Tory government attempting to impose the cost of post-COVID on the working class. A 1% pay freeze for nurses, just the most obvious example. There is a growing movement in the trade unions and beyond. There is resistance in the streets too, on climate change, on Black Lives Matter, and magnificently on Palestine, the international issue, the key divide of this generation, just as Vietnam, just as the American civil rights struggle and the fight against South African apartheid was in previous generations. I was at the first large demo for Palestine in London 3 or so weeks ago. It was a magnificent expression of resistance, mainly young, majority women, diverse. The only underrepresented group was old white men. This is the basis for any movement of fundamental change. There is a thirst for change in our communities, crying out for courageous, progressive political leadership and a political vehicle to deliver that change. What better vehicle can there be than the Labour Party, rooted as it is in the trade union movement? And Martin Forde, that is why what has happened to Labour is so criminal. Not just self-inflicted electoral annihilation, that's bad enough, but above all, it is the loss of hope for a generation. The establishment wing of the party, as graphically shown in the leaked report, was terrified of Jeremy Corbyn, of what he represented, of what the party had the potential to become under his leadership. They feared and hated Jeremy much more than the Tories. They preferred a Tory government to a Labour government led by Jeremy, and they are determined never to allow this possibility of a socialist-led Labour Party to happen again, whatever the cost to the party, to the Labour movement, and to the planet. They have declared war on the party, but we, the members, are determined to resist. Comrade Forde, this is what is at stake.
Okay, thank you very much, Graham. Very, very strong contribution there. Thank you very much indeed. I should say that basically we're giving each of our speakers 5 minutes to say what they would say if they were going to speak to the Forde Inquiry in public. Obviously, that will be only a fraction of what they might have contributed in the way of a submission. So the next speaker we're going to have is Tina Werkmann, who is involved in many of the left-wing organisations that are active at the moment. And I will hand over straight away to Tina to tell us what she's going to say. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Tina Werkmann. I'm here as the co-chair of Labour Against the Witch Hunt. We made a very good submission, I think, to the Forde Inquiry, which was drafted by Tony Greenstein and myself. I hope to stay within 5 minutes, but there's a lot of things that need to be said. And, you know, Comrade Graham and Norman in particular have looked at what the right did to us, and that certainly comes about in the leaked report. But there's another side to it, and it's not a very pleasant side, and we really need to look at that. And that is what the left did to us, our own side. The report was drawn up by the faction, which I would broadly describe as the Corbyn leadership. It was drawn up to show, yes, the sabotage by the right, but it also was supposed to show that the Corbyn leadership tried its very, very best to deal with the anti-Semitism problem in the party. And then they couldn't, because the right sabotaged them in their efforts to clear out the anti-Semites. And I think we have to really understand how important this issue is. That's the crux of the real problem here and the reason why Corbyn and the left were defeated, rather than call out the lie that the Labour Party and the Labour movement are overrun with anti-Semites. An absolute atrocious lie, and an evident lie at that. Unfortunately, the Corbyn leadership chose to pretend to believe it, to believe this lie. They didn't actually believe it, I don't think, but they pretended. And that was part of the futile strategy, I think, to try and appease the right. Once we're in Downing Street number 10, we can deal with the right, but until then, we need them. We have to keep them on board to get to Downing Street number 10. I think that was the biggest mistake the Corbyn leadership made. For start, the right had and has no desire at all to come on board with the left-wing leadership. They would rather destroy the party, as they have proven over and over again. But despite all the evidence that this was happening, unfortunately, the Corbyn leadership continued to try and appease the right. And every single step back we took, well, the Corbyn leadership took, the right moved 2 steps forward. I'm not saying any of this to dump on Corbyn. He's a lovely guy. Though I think the left actually should stop with the hero worship. I think that's becoming a real problem. It was pretty disturbing at the time, but it's still going on. And it's actually the opposite of what socialism is, like the self-liberation of the working class, not by some messiah who's going to liberate us, but ourselves, getting organized, taking responsibility, etc. But I'm saying it because we need to learn some serious lessons of why and how we and the Corbyn leadership, or the Corbyn leadership and us on the whole left, were defeated so badly. Otherwise, we will make the same mistakes over and over again. So Corbyn leadership means not just Corbyn, but also John McDonnell, Jenny Formby, John Landsman in particular. And I think the two Johns were actually quite instrumental in the witch hunt against the left. They very vocally supported the implementation of the IHRA fake definition of anti-Semitism, despite the fact that it's been so heavily criticized for purposefully conflating anti-Zionism, which is criticism of Israel, with anti-Semitism. And as Labour Against the Witch Hunt and others have warned, the implementation of the IHRA by the NEC in 2018 by the NEC did nothing to bring an end to the ongoing claims that the party is riddled with anti-Semites, quite the opposite, because the right had smelled blood. Notice this is the way to go. This is how we're going to get Corbyn. Anti-Semitism, of course. He's pro-Palestine. He's an anti-Semite. And they demanded more victims, and they certainly got them. Jenny Formby was appointed General Secretary in March 2018, which is, I mean, it is ridiculous. It should have been, Ian McNichol should have been sacked on day one. Another mistake, but, you know, leave that there. But 2 years after she was appointed, and while she temporarily halted automatic and instant suspensions, she later reinstated them. And actually still in 2020 and March 2020 NEC by-elections, Joe Bird and 2 other NEC candidates were suspended in the middle of the contest. Joe Bird would have won. She would have been on the NEC, but she was suspended, an outrage under Jenny Formby. Jackie Walker and Chris Williamson are here tonight to talk about the role of the Corbyn leadership in their own cases. But it's worth pointing out that they have been treated shamefully by a left-wing leadership, nothing short of shameful, and we should be able to openly say so. For example, we read that in 2018, in April 2018, Jeremy Corbyn and Jenny Formby met with the Board of Deputies, the Jewish Leadership Council, and the Community and Security Trust, and agreed with their demand that, this is a quote from the report, the party should expedite Ken Livingstone and Jackie Walker's cases. And they certainly did. Jackie will speak for herself tonight. But remember, Ken Livingstone, he was done for saying that Hitler had supported Zionism before he went mad and ended up killing 6 million Jews. You can argue about how eloquent that throwaway comment was, etc. But it's a fact. He was referring to the Havara agreement between the Nazi government in the early 30s and the Zionists. It's an historic fact. But Corbyn went along with this, the witch hunt against Ken Livingstone, and he even condemned him for his grossly insensitive comments and claiming that he should have been apologizing, was deeply disappointed that he didn't apologize for stating a fact. Chris Williamson was punished and suspended 3 times, not for saying anything anti-Semitic, but for defending those like Mark Wadsworth, who were wrongly accused of anti-Semitism. And this is not just guilt by association, but actually a new charge, denialism. The report, the leaked report actually approvingly quotes Jenny Formby's really, really long charge sheet against Chris and clearly states that he has in fact done nothing wrong. I'm pushing my time here, but this is really important. This is Jenny Formby. Several of these campaigns against Chris, if taken as an isolated incident, may have resulted in no action. However, taken together, they add up to a pattern of behavior that is not only reckless, it has brought the party into disrepute. I would also add that I personally spoke with Chris only 2 weeks ago and asked him to stop aligning himself with Labour Against the Witch Hunt and speaking about anti-Semitism in the way he is. The way he is was, Chris said, there isn't actually a problem with anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. It's the right pushing this narrative, and we should stand up against it.
Could you wind up, please, Tina?
I will. But that denialism was a new charge, which quite rightly sounds like a solemn witch hunt, because that exactly is what it is. The Wavertree Four were also suspended on exactly the same charge of denialism. They're questioning or denying the allegation of anti-Semitism automatically confers guilt, a characteristic of the witch hunt trials. And this is extremely important that we understand this, not in order to dump, as I say, not to criticize Corbyn, etc. But this whole campaign has led to a massive, massive attack on the right to free speech on Israel-Palestine. And we're seeing it in all levels of society now. Everywhere, people who are standing up for Palestine are being labeled as anti-Semites. And it seems to be like common knowledge. You criticize Israel, you're anti-Semite. And this has been the aim of the campaign the whole way through. And unless we take that seriously and learn that lesson, we're in deep trouble.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you. Thank you. So Leah Levane, can we hear from you, please? Leah.
You can. I thought I was coming on a bit later. Yeah, thank you. It's quite hard to follow that. I just, for those of you who don't know, I'm co-chair of Jewish Voice for Labour. And the rumours are that Jeremy Corbyn and the Jewish Voice for Labour were meeting all of the time. And we were more or less pulling the strings. Well, we did a pretty bad job if that was the case. The reality is we never officially met with him. And early on, when we had a meeting with someone in his office, and they suggested that they had roundtable meetings of different Jewish groups and asked us whether we would come if the Jewish Labour Movement, the Board of Deputies, etc., were there. We said, of course we will. But the reality was that those organisations refused to be at a meeting if we were present. And surprise, surprise, those meetings with us present never happened. So I've slightly sort of switched a couple of things that I was going to say because they've been covered. The pervasiveness of the attacks on anti-Semitism led to me, if I've got a personal story, I was a councillor for 3 years until May. And the reason I stood down was because I realized this is still going on and that the Tories in my area would run a filthy campaign against me with all the accusations of being a self-hating Jew, a Jew in name only, and whatever else. And I just didn't want to be a distraction for the local campaign. Maybe that was wrong of me, but that was a decision. I'm not sure I would have got through region anyway. I pulled out before I had to submit my honest gov. I've never posted anything bad on social media. So in my role as co-chair, when the Forde Inquiry called for submissions, we asked people to send us copies, and I've got dozens of them. The details, the sorts of experiences that people had, the appalling treatment that I'm sure we'll hear more of, is just phenomenal. And the dedication of these comrades to this party that treated them, I won't swear, really badly. And it is shocking, Norman outlined how ludicrous it is that the Forde Inquiry is not planning anytime soon, or probably ever, to publish its findings. Norman referred to the reasons, which is that the publication would interfere with the work of the Information Commissioner's Office. This has been categorically debunked. The Information Commission Office replied to a Freedom of Information request stating that there are ongoing investigations into possible data breaches by the Labour Party, but went on to say, and I quote, "I can confirm that we have had no contact with the Forde Inquiry and have not received any information from or given any directions to the inquiry." It went back to the Forde Inquiry, and they did hint really that it was their decision to postpone that publication. We've considered, that's the Forde Inquiry, whether any aspect of our report, etc., etc., etc. So given the Information Commissioner's Office has not asked for any delay, or even been asked by the Forde Inquiry for an opinion about whether they think there will be any problem, in whose interest is the delay? Is it that the shocking, by investigating, even under the limited terms of reference that they accepted, has actually thrown up how absolutely horrendous things are, and they're terrified to release that? If even 10% of what was said in the leaked report is true, it's a catalogue of disaster, of, well, just disgraceful behaviour. And I would just like to emphasise that it's disgraceful behaviour, particularly, but not only, by the very people whose wages are being paid by the hard-pressed members of the Labour Party through their subs, their donations, and their fundraising. That the majority of that is paid for by volunteers. And that just makes it particularly shameful. But of course, it isn't just them. So the leaked report presented a damning indictment of the actions of far too many members of the bureaucracy that at the very least distance itself from the democratically elected leader and the policies supported by the vast majority of up to 550,000 members. And it's this failure to publish is an affront not only to the former leadership and the members, many of whom have now left in disgust, but also, and this is why it really matters, to the possibility of creating a society that works in the interests of the 99% rather than the 1%. And this is beyond the shores of the UK. So many activists around the world were looking to the UK under Jeremy Corbyn, for all his limitations, to see, to prove that another way was possible. I said that I've seen many of the submissions. Many of those were written by Jewish members who've been loyal party members, often office holders. Some of them were councillors and or parliamentary candidates who had memberships of between 2 and 52 years. And these are all people who were enthused and excited by the possibilities that were offered. Others joined, or in my case, rejoined, and dedicated many hours each week to the party for real change. So I've not really focused, and I know my time's coming to an end, I've not focused on the catalogue of specific heinous acts of deliberate destruction, because others have already started to and will continue to cover that. And I'm sure that when we get to participants from the 450 people who are here, that will be covered. But the consequences of these actions for the party's bureaucracy, by the party's bureaucracy, heavily compounded by the failure to publish the findings of this very narrowly focused investigation, is a travesty, and I consider it dangerous for democracy. I've considered that the consequences are profound and far-reaching. It may sound far-fetched to say that this opened up the door to the far right in the guise of this pernicious Tory government. The media and the current leadership still seek to blame Corbyn and Corbynistas, that's us, for the years of attacks from within the party as well as outside, for the 2019 defeat. But we expect the ruling class to behave like that. We expect the ruling class to oppose such a serious challenge to neoliberalism and indeed to war and the arms trade. But we have a right to expect a Labour Party from top to bottom challenging this, highlighting the self-interest behind it. Instead, we had a bureaucracy and, we had a membership and leadership that sought transformation for the many and not the few. And a bureaucracy and most of the Parliamentary Labour Party determined to cling on to the party's shameful historic role, being the second guard of the ruling class. For those also who took any interest in the suspensions, expulsions, etc., they may well ask, if the party treats its own hard-working volunteers so badly, how and why should we trust them to treat the rest of us any better?
Thank you, Leah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks for that. Now, can anyone tell me if Kevin Bean has arrived? Because I had a look, I can't see him, but...
He is here, yeah.
Oh, he is. Okay, Kevin. Kevin Bean is the next speaker who's going to speak about the Wavertree experience. So, Kevin, could you give us your 5 minutes?
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I was the secretary of Wavertree Constituency Labour Party, and I was initially suspended and then expelled from the party. And one other comrade was expelled, and our other two comrades still remain suspended. Now, our main problem, our main issue, was the issue of so-called denialism. I won't go through the ins and outs of this, but I think one or two small facts would help comrades, to understand what happened. Comrades will remember that we had a Labour MP, Luciana Berger, who defected from the Labour Party. She came under considerable criticism from the constituency on the grounds of her refusal to support a Corbyn government and for being on the right. So any criticisms within the party of our MP were purely on political grounds. Now, comrades may also be aware that Luciana Berger was Jewish, or is Jewish. And indeed, she alleged that large amounts of the criticisms of her within the party were, quote, anti-Semitic. Now, she did face anti-Semitic abuse that came from the far right. And indeed, the party, and it was the left in the party who stood by her and defended her on any attacks on those type of grounds. So when Luciana Berger left the party, we then had a reselection conference, and at the 2019 we elected a left-wing MP, or a so-called left-wing MP, a member of the Socialist Campaign Group. Now, in the following months, our MP published an article in a newspaper, more or less substantiating the claims that Luciana Berger had been subject to anti-Semitic abuse from within the left of the Labour Party. And she echoed the claims that were made by Tom Watson that people in the party had put Luciana Berger under that sort of pressure. Comrades may remember that Wavertree Labour Party was described by Tom Watson as racist thugs. So that sort of issue was, you know, comrades who'd spent a lifetime fighting against racism, comrades who were genuine socialists, who were, you know, really committed to that sort of fight, were genuinely upset, indeed angry at it. So the issue of our commitment to socialism and anti-racism, but also the reasons for our opposition to Luciana Berger were really quite central. Now, in May 2020, four of our four comrades drafted an article in response to our MP's arguments about why Luciana had left the Labour Party. And we made it plain that indeed this issue had been really exaggerating, that any attempt by our new MP to kowtow to this sort of argument was making, you know, not only a bad mistake, but a serious political error. Now, for that, in circulating that article within our Labour Party internal newsletter, we were suspended, and we were suspended on one prime ground, and that was that our behaviour was detrimental to the party's conduct of its anti-racism activities. In other words, to tell the truth about why Luciana Berger had left the Labour Party got us into trouble. Telling the truth about the nature of anti-Semitism, and indeed arguing that there was no anti-Semitism within Wavertree Labour Party, was regarded as being denialism, that we were denying, and therefore that we were in fact obstructing the party's activity, and that indeed in doing that, in denying that there was a problem, we ourselves were being anti-Semitic. Now, this, I think, is a fairly commonplace experience. You know, comrades will have, you know, come across this sort of thing elsewhere. But to our comrades in Wavertree, it was a great shock. And indeed, we fought, and indeed are still fighting a campaign on that issue. We're still maintaining our connections together. We're still out campaigning. We still have support within the constituency. But I think the important thing here is that that attack, and indeed the complaints that led to our suspensions, didn't come from the right wing. They came from people who claimed to be on the left. And above all, they claimed to come from those people who said that we have to, in a sense, to make concessions to this argument, that we have to, in a sense, to acknowledge the arguments of the Labour right. And I think this is really quite a central theme. We expect the Labour right to attack us. What we don't expect is comrades who align themselves with the left, who are members of the Socialist Campaign Group, you know, to really join in. And Wavertree was in the thick of the storm for much of that period. Comrades will remember those national headlines in 2018 and into 2019. And, you know, comrades were facing, you know, personal abuse, facing pressure from the media. Comrades, often quite elderly, housebound comrades, were being accused of anti-Semitism and so forth. So we regard this as a very serious question. And that's why when we put forward our position inside the party, the position that got us suspended, we were defending the good name of Wavertree Labour Party, and above all, we were defending the politics of the left and the politics of the left in Liverpool that stand against racism. So, comrades, we're going to continue the fight. We're going to continue taking part in activities and campaigns like this, and we take great heart from the solidarity that comrades on this panel have, shown us, and we also, take great heart from the degree of support that we're getting throughout the country. But this issue of denialism, which was really very central, which in a sense says that if you deny the facts, if you put forward an alternative political position, that makes you anti-Semitism, is an absolutely gross charge. It's an absolutely gross distortion of reality and shows the nature of what is really now clearly a witch hunt. People outside of Liverpool, people who are only sort of dimly aware of what's going on, now tar much of our movement with these accusations. And it's this charge of denialism which is really at the centre of it.
Could you wind up, please, Kevin?
I'll wind up there and thank the comrades for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much. I must remember to unmute myself before I try to get people to wind up. That's a very important point. Yes, thank you very much for that, Kevin. One thing I should say, people shouldn't despair from hearing, I think, from the Forde Inquiry. People are taking action to fight back in the Labour Party. I think there is an attitude abroad that, at least among some people, that we will stay and fight in the Labour Party, that it's our Labour Party and that we're not going to let it be taken over by bureaucrats, by an alien leadership, or by MPs who think that they want the party to move in a particular direction. And I should mention that there are going to be a number of events in Brighton in the conference, the Labour Party conference in September, and the Resist event in the Rialto Theatre should be a particularly exciting one. There's going to be a lot of people there. Some of the people that you see tonight are going to be there, and we're going to be staging a great fight back against what's happening in the party. And one of the people who is going to be central to all that is Greg Hadfield from Brighton, who I will now hand over to speak, to give his 5 minutes to the Not the Forde Inquiry. So, Greg.
Lovely to see you, Norman. Thanks for this fantastic event. I mean, it's astonishing, really. I just want to say a few things to begin with. My life changed. We had a discussion before this meeting about the impact on individuals of what the Labour Party has done to us, our party has done to us as individuals. My life changed almost 5 years ago on July the 9th, 2016, and we'll be having an event in Brighton to promote the Resist event in September of some of the people who are involved in that, and I'll come back to that. But I just want to make one point. As someone who joined the party in 2006, I had no illusions. I joined the party because of the Iraq War. My party, my class's party, was never, ever going to wage an unlawful war for its own interests. That's why I joined. On the day Tony Blair announced he was going to stand down as the leader. And so from 2006 onwards, I knew what I was letting myself in for. I was joining a reformist party that wasn't going to bring about a socialist, radical, revolutionary transformation of society. But hey, I was 50, when was that going to happen? And I found myself at the top table in Brighton and Hove with people who turned out to be members of Progress, secret members of Progress, who were working in cahoots secretly with officers of the Labour Party, who ended up getting Peter Kyle selected as a candidate in Hove from an all-male shortlist of 16 people in an open selection. I mean, it's just a fix. And so I had no illusions, but then I had great hope because I'd been suspended once in 2015. I won't go into that now, but I was unsuspended in 2016. And Jeremy Corbyn was leader. It was phenomenal. We found ourselves in Brighton and Hove being the biggest party unit in the UK, 6,200 members. And at the age of 50 odd, I foolishly agreed to stand to be secretary of the city party. I thought it was something to do with the rest of my life. Gave me the chance to at least believe we could achieve something. That's what Jeremy gave me. It was hope. Now, I've always been able to cope with despair. It's the hope I find difficult, yeah? But Jeremy gave us hope. And during the chicken coop and all the resignations, etc., in the run up to July the 9th, 2016, it was magnificent. I wasn't sure we were going to win until July the 9th, when 620 people turned up on a hot, sweaty Saturday afternoon at a meeting that had been delayed so that Peter Kyle and Warren Morgan, the then leader of the Labour group, could attend a progress conference in London and get back down to try and fix the meeting, because Warren Morgan had sent out a private email falsely accusing party members of invading the Labour Party, yeah? We had a magnificent membership and I got 66% of the vote. But halfway through the meeting, unbeknownst to me, complaints were already going in. The meeting was packed. There were people multiple voting. There were people who weren't members. Ivor Kaplan, Peter Carl's friend from Labour Friends of Israel and Jewish Labour Movement, said people were using buckets to collect votes. Shocking. They were accusing. And then it came. I didn't know, but they lied provably. In front of 620 witnesses, it was claimed that someone spat at a member of staff, that someone abused Peter Kyle, that all sorts of shenanigans were going on. And the paid Labour organiser in the meeting, before we knew the results, told friends, it's all right, we're going to get the meeting and the votes annulled, and we're going to do it all over again. And that's exactly what happened. I and my comrades made the mistake of winning with 2-to-1 majority in one of the biggest turnouts of an AGM in the history of the Labour Party locally. And then we had an inquiry. We know what we think of Labour inquiries, yeah? Catherine Buckingham gets many mentions in the Labour leaks. Here's the Labour leaks, by the way. That's it, 851 pages, yeah? This is my response. It's on Medium. But Catherine Buckingham said, well, first of all, when I proved that there was no spitting or violence or abuse or anything with the CCTV, she said she wasn't interested, wouldn't entertain it. But also, as it turns out, in the inquiry, she says, and I don't care about quoting her, but she says, let me just find it so I get it right. She says, the report says, in July 2016, the pro-Corbyn left decisively won Brighton CLP's annual general meeting. Local momentum activists organised to all gather at a certain place, then go to the AGM, da-di-da. Stolliday discussed overturning Brighton CLP's AGM with Buckingham. And what did Buckingham say? Overturn AGM, deal with individuals, show what we're up against, a bunch of SWP and trots marching straight from rally to invade a CL meeting and stuff handfuls of ballot papers in boxes, even when they're not members of the party. Buckingham said, I say act now and worry about the rules and legal issues later. As long as we don't do something, it'll end up fucking everything else up. Yeah, that's what she said. That's what she said. She was responsible for investigating my suspension on the day that they were setting up the steering committee to look into the reconstitution of the Brighton and Hove City Labour Party. And I would have been on it, but I got suspended, so I couldn't be on it, thanks to Warren Morgan. It took 18 months before I even found out I was accused of anti-Semitism, because I said the state of Israel is a racist endeavour and always has been. One tweet, done twice, and I was suspended. 18 months, I got to it, I was cleared. The day it was clear that I'd been cleared, Warren Morgan quit the party. Within 3 months, well, within 3 days, actually, as I've since learned, within 3 months, I was suspended again. It took 8 months before I found out why I was suspended. I was suspended for a tweet. What did the tweet say? It was the same tweet. The state of Israel is a racist endeavor and always has been. 8, 9 months on, I still haven't got a hearing.
Greg, could you wind
just
up?
done it 3 times. 8 months on, I finally got a subject access request, and it told me why I'd been suspended. I'd had high hopes of the Forde Inquiry. But as you know, I can deal with the despair. It's the hope I can't stand. And the hope that the Forde Inquiry is doing anything except prove, if it does, what we all know. The Labour Party is the most corrupt, anti-democratic party of its kind in the world. And it's the deliberate subversion of the party that our enemies have successfully achieved. And we have to stop it somehow.
Thanks, Greg. Well, I'm sure you're going to be part of the effort to stop it in the Resist initiative in Brighton. People are also talking about taking some direct action in July to coincide with the next NEC meeting, even though that's going to be a virtual meeting, but there are plans afoot to have a demonstration there. Obviously, COVID permitting, which is a very unpredictable thing at this time. I should also say at this point, we did get some very powerful material very kindly sent to us by the Crispin Flintoff show. I think he does quite a good show there in keeping items alive to the grassroots of the Labour Party. And some of the footage that he showed was stuff that was basically of a programme that he made after the leaked report came out. And this really touches on the electoral sabotage alleged in the report, because a number of people speak in places like Southampton and Middlesbrough about the way they feel that their electoral hopes were sabotaged by bureaucracy not giving them the resources that they needed, redirecting resources to other areas. And it is absolutely heartbreaking to see these activists who, you know, still have the memories of the campaign that they believe they could have won, and now looking at the leaked report think they have been absolutely deliberately sabotaged in their efforts. And that seems to me the allegation that needs to be brought out and proven or not proven, but there's a lot of very strong evidence outside the leaked report, because as somebody mentioned, I think I'm also a suspended chair of a CLP, of Thanet CLP, and we had masses and masses of experience of what the bureaucracy would do to our party, our local party, and how they basically tried to stop us functioning in any kind of effective way. But I will not, I've just trespassed on my chairman's prerogative to talk about that. The next person we're going to ask to speak is Becky Massey, or Rebecca Massey. Becky,
yeah,
are you
here,
there?
Norman.
Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Norman. Yeah, I've just been watching chat, and people are saying, yeah, but what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, we need to carry on. Actually, Forde needs to carry on. The evidence that I'm going to give this evening comes from my subject access request, and it shows how expendable people are for Keir Starmer, and that the behaviour outlined in the leaked report continues to this very day. So what happened with me happened last year in the summer during lockdown. And it started with a briefing paper from the Board of Deputies of British Jews dated May the 11th, 2020. The briefing was given to Keir Starmer, and it gave him details of 11 anti-Semitic members identified by the Board of Deputies as the most serious that we have seen, and all require permanent exclusion from the Labour Party. They also asked Starmer for an update on each of the cases by the end of May. In this Board of Deputy briefing paper, I'm number 8 of the most serious cases of anti-Semitism the Board of Deputies has ever seen. And their evidence for this assertion is 2 tweets made by me. One of the tweets was from 2015 during the first leadership election. And I quote an article from Haaretz, the Israeli paper, in which the author opines that if Corbyn becomes the leader of Labour, Israel's influence on the party could weaken. The second tweet was replying to a post in 2016 from Chukka Amuna, in which I say that Amuna appears to have conflated Zionist with Jewish, which he did actually. These two tweets that I made have had to bear a very heavy load for the last 5 years. They were first used to complain about me in February 2017, shortly after my election as branch chair in Hove, the branch which Labour Friends of Israel vice chair Peter Kyle is in, and he was not pleased with my election as chair. The response from Labour to the 2017 complaint about these two tweets was taking no action, and they wrote, "We hope this matter is now behind you." These same two tweets were used to complain about me in September 2018. And again, they were not deemed worthy of any action. And at that time, I wrote to Jenny Formby about the reuse of the tweets and suggested that she might look into vexatious complaints. Yet these, by now, very old, very tired tweets reappear again in May 2020 in the Board of Deputies memo. This is now tweet triple jeopardy for me. You would have thought that forensic lawyer Starmer might have looked at what he was given in evidence by the Board of Deputies, 2 5-year-old tweets, already investigated twice, and suggest to them that this can hardly demonstrate one of the worst cases the Board of Deputies has ever seen, because it's blatantly ludicrous. But instead, Starmer ordered staff to find something to expel me for to comply with the Board of Deputies' demands. On the morning of 18th of May 2020, Starmer met with representatives of JLM, and on the afternoon of the 18th of May, there are a flurry of emails passing between staffers and Lotto, showing that they're searching my Twitter feed. And eventually they find a 7-month-old tweet about Chris Williamson. And there's a series of emails, 1 o'clock. I believe this tweet warrants auto-exclusion. It's a clear endorsement of Chris Williamson. It's clear that the staffers are unsure about the tweet, and I'll tell you what the tweet said. It said, the 99% of people will have the best friend in Chris Williamson as an MP, who, if re-elected, will work for them. Another staffer says, good spot. I think that definitely qualifies as support for a candidate. Another person, hey, yeah, I agree. It appears to be clearly supporting him to be re-elected as an independent MP. Somebody else chips in, I agree. Can we get a suspension letter out with that evidence today? I guess we give her 7 days to reply. And I got the email with the suspension letter at 6:20 that evening. What is clear is that the Board of Deputies makes an assertion about me to Keir Starmer with no credible evidence for their claim, and that staffers are instructed to hunt for something, anything, that can be used against me. This all took place in the middle of a global pandemic. The UK was still in lockdown, and I was shielding when the email arrived. My suspension was abusive, corrupt, against natural justice, and it shows that the Labour Party cares nothing for the reputation or the well-being of its members. Why have I been complained about for years? Partly because I was elected in the Brighton City Party, which Greg's just talked about, but I'm a very active campaigner for Palestine, and my support of Corbyn annoyed the right wing in Hove. My persecutors over the years have included members of JLM, Labour Against Anti-Semitism, Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, and the Hove right wing of Labour, who Alexei Sayle was right to describe as some of the most vile, gruesome people that you could meet. I did respond to my suspension letter, but I was auto excluded on the 2nd of June, which had already been determined on the 18th of May. And I doubt anybody even read my response. If these are the stitch-ups that Starmer is prepared to do to keep sweet with the Israel lobby, he's not fit to be leader of Labour now or at any time. Shame on the Board of Deputies, shame on Keir Starmer, shame on the staffers doing the witch hunting, and shame on the Labour Party for its abuse of its membership. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you very much. Very clear. Yes, so you mentioned Chris Williamson there. So as it happens, we've actually got Chris Williamson here. So Chris, could you speak to us, please?
Yeah, let me just sort of tell you a little bit about my story then. I mean, I was a member of the Labour Party since 1976. I devoted my life to the Labour Party. I was a dedicated activist for the Labour Party, active in every single election from the year I joined. Well, the year after, actually, there was no elections in 1976 by the time I joined.
Chris, sorry, there's something wrong with your microphone. Is it possible it's not plugged in properly? It comes and goes a little bit, the sound.
Oh dear. Let me see if I can put it up a bit. Is that any better?
I hope so. Start talking. We'll hear it.
Okay, I'll try. Okay. I was just saying, just in terms of my record, I've been a Labour Party member, a dedicated Labour Party activist since the year I joined in 1976, active in every single election and indeed in between elections. And I was privileged enough to be elected as a member of Parliament in 2010 and was actually quite popular, believe it or not, with the Parliamentary Labour Party in that first term. But after Jeremy announced his decision to stand as leader, I threw my weight behind his campaign. And when I was re-elected to Parliament in 2017, I'd said that people told me to steer clear of Jeremy, distance myself from him, because the most important thing was winning if we could regroup. And I refused to do that and issued a press release saying that I was the most Corbyn-friendly candidate standing anywhere in the country, in the most marginal seat in England. I was Jeremy's most vociferous champion, I think it's fair to say, in the Parliamentary Labour Party. And for that, I was subjected to an orchestrated smear campaign, really from day one. Indeed, people like Ruth Smith, who used to work for Bitcom as a spin doctor, was calling really for action against me as early as September 2017 at the JLM annual general meeting, I think it was. I'd made it clear, and I was quoting what Jewish comrades had said to me, that anti-Semitism had been weaponized, and they took great exception to the fact that I was making that point, and indeed making the point that anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, as other speakers have mentioned this evening, was being conflated. That was unconscionable to them. So what did they do? What was my crime that they were so upset about, that apart from that they used to justify the calls for suspending me and indeed expelling me? Well, it was because I was defending the Labour Party's reputation as an anti-racist party. As I said, I joined the Labour Party in 1976. I was very active in the Anti-Nazi League at that time, when the National Front, the fascist National Front, was on the rise and gaining quite a lot of support in local elections. And many of my comrades who were in the Anti-Nazi League at that time were also Labour Party members. And I was making a point that the Labour Party was kind of the backbone, really, of that campaign against the rise of fascism in the 1970s. And my other heinous crime was to defend people who had been falsely accused, people like Mark Wadsworth, the long-standing black rights campaigner who introduced Nelson Mandela to the Stephen Lawrence family. He was demonized as a bigot. But I also defended anti-Zionist Jews. And that was seen as I think Tina mentioned in her remarks, that was deemed to be or amount to what Jenny Formby referred to, the Orwellian phrase, as a pattern of behaviour. None of those things in their own constituted a problem at all, but taken together, as Tina pointed out there, it amounted to a pattern of behaviour. A pattern of what? A pattern of behaviour of showing solidarity to people. So I was suspended. It was a terrible blow to me. I mean, it really did have an effect on me. I was incredibly depressed by it. Wasn't really comforted anyway by the fact that I was referred to the Samaritans in the letter that I received stating that I was being suspended. But I went through that process. The Kafkaesque process, didn't actually speak about it. It was my reputation was being dragged through the gutter while the party was briefing against me in the media. Indeed, the party, and this happens to a lot of people, briefed the media before they even told me that I was being suspended. I went through a process and kept my counsel. It then went to a panel after several months, and I was reinstated. And because of the furore that was created in the media by the Parliamentary Labour Party, I was suspended again by Formby within 48 hours. I then took a High Court case against the party, which went to court in September, and the judge reserved his judgment and actually handed down the judgment in October, which basically found in my favour. But the party had sought to delay the hearing on the grounds that there was no case for urgency. I was saying there was likelihood of an early general election, and they were saying there was no evidence for that. There's a fixture of Parliament. Mr. Williamson barely speculated. It took 3 preliminary hearings. It was thrown out on each occasion. And at the third hearing, the judge not only threw it out, but said he's going to set a date for the full hearing. Within 36 hours, I was then served with a further suspension because the party knew they were on very shaky ground and thought they might lose, as indeed they did lose that substantive case. The judge, we did ask the judge to rule on this suspension, which was issued 6 days before the hearing. He said he didn't think it was appropriate for the court to involve itself in the internal disciplinary processes of the Labour Party, and didn't effectively rule that. But we won that case. That cost the Labour Party in excess of £200,000. My legal costs were around £89,000, and theirs must have been well above that because they've got a barrister, a QC to represent them in court. In that time, in between being suspended and going to the second time going back to the High Court, I sought to a subject access request. It was refused on the grounds that there was over 60,000 separate pieces of information, and therefore it would be an unwarranted burden, and therefore they didn't have to comply with it. Essentially, what we've seen here, in my opinion, and what I think the Forde review should look at, is party bureaucrats essentially trampling on the rights of party members, trashing essentially Article 10 of the Human Rights Act, which explicitly says everyone has the right to freedom of expression, including freedom to hold opinions and to receive and impart information and ideas without interference. Well, they are grossly interfering in those rights of party members. And I think that is an outrage, and it is something which is completely alien to a democratic party that I joined, getting on for 45 years ago.
Thank you very much, Chris. That's a very, very powerful contribution. Thank you for that. I think at this stage, I'm going to read out a message that Ken Loach sent to us. I think I saw him actually somewhere in the audience, but if he wants to come back, he's welcome to come back. But I make no apologies for reading this statement out, as I think it's a very powerful and concise one. So it's addressed to Dear Mr. Forde. I feel sorry for you. Regardless of what you have been told, the leadership of the party is not interested in reading about the betrayal of senior party officials. The leadership is up to its neck in trying to achieve the same result, the removal of the left, disregarding party democracy and the wishes of the great majority that joined Labour because they were inspired by Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell. Starmer, Evans, and their group want a small party that they can control. No troublesome activists, just standing ovations at conference and a media that is friendly because they know nothing will change. Let's learn the lesson. When the left wins again, and we will, let's make Labour a party that truly represents the interests of the vast majority, Labour with a small L. The broad church argument has been shown not to work. The right wing don't believe in it, and neither should we. There was no broad church when Jeremy was leader. Some in the choir stabbed the vicar in the back. solidarity in the struggle to reclaim the party. Ken Loach. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Loach. I'm now going to go on to the, and if Ken, you want to come back on that, you're please welcome to do so. But now we'll go to our final speaker on the platform tonight, the virtual platform, which is Jackie Walker. Over to you, Jackie.
Well, quite an emotional thing for me to hear this going on. And I want to say straight away at first that none of us should actually be here today. We shouldn't be having to do this because a functioning democracy actually depends on a balance of institutional integrity and a fearless and investigative media. And that's what we haven't got. And the consequences of that are going to follow us for years afterwards. Now, there's much that we can't say today because, you know, if we had an official inquiry, we would be protected by confidentiality, whereas, as we know, there will be people listening to this actually waiting for any of us to make any kind of slip so that they can sue us, because what they want to do is not engage in conversation. They want to destroy us. And in that, I totally endorse what Ken is saying. The right wing do not want a broad church. Let's forget that. And anyone on the left who actually thinks that we can still organise and work with the right, I think it's just mad. So this is my accusation. I accuse the Labour Party of breaking Rule C211(7), which says members at every level have the right to be treated with dignity and respect, and that at all levels, party officers will exercise their powers in good faith. They have not done this. They still are not doing it. Thousands of members have been introduced. The electorate has been tricked and manipulated. Now, here for my testimony, this is, yes, what I'm thinking about me, but in fact, I'm just thinking and standing and speaking for thousands of others. Why I'm here is that I had the great misfortune to become high profile. So I accuse the so-called moderates, the right-wing faction who are the majority of the parliamentary Labour Party, and those who control the bureaucracy of the Labour Party, of the most indecent and factional behaviour. Now, talking of what happened to me, many people, not just here but elsewhere, will share similar circumstances. Now, I went through 2 suspensions and, of course, 1 expulsion. I mean, they can only execute you once. They can only burn the witch once. I had been an active anti-racist and political activist, both professionally and personally, pretty much all my life. And not just because of being Black or, you know, being a radical. My Jewish heritage has informed my practice. The first suspension, which was carried out actually when John Stolliday was head of compliance, was relatively short-lived. I was, in fact, one of the first people to be suspended, certainly one of the first high-profile people to be suspended in what became a witch hunt. And when it happened to me, most people didn't really know what was going on. Now, according to the redacted papers that I have read under Freedom of Information, a senior member of the disciplinary unit, and I think if any of you look at the leaked report, you'll know who that is, looking at the evidence against me, believed my suspension had been too hasty and that what I had said could be seen to be offensive by some, but it could also be seen as reasonable political comment. But for whatever reasons, and that would take a whole another program and the history of racism and a bit of psychotherapy as well to really get into, none of which related to any actual power I held. The campaign of vilification against me was breathtaking. Now, at this point, it's important to recall that many of the people who should have been comrades standing with me, including our leaders, and I have read some of the comments that have been going on, just a few of them, but this does include the leaders, appeared to have been, and let's put it in as best as we can, confused about the nature of these accusations. The majority, the overwhelming majority of which were politically motivated and had nothing to do with racism. Now, this campaign against me was multifaceted. Every move, every utterance was critiqued, twisted, taken out of context, and publicised. Our reactionary media, led by The Guardian and the Mail, acted as happy bedfellows to the people who were smearing. But more importantly than this, many Labour MPs took advantage of their access to the media to harass me and smear me as a way of browbeating the party into submission, as a way of browbeating Corbyn. Now, there was, of course, some in the PLP who knew that all this, just like Chris says, was absolute nonsense, but they were silent, except for one MP, and that, of course, was Chris, and they were going to be sure to do for him. But the MPs were silenced by the fear of a witch hunt in the same way, and I'm sorry to say this, as the socialist group of MPs remain silent now. They remain silent, and that's why what we're saying tonight is so important. This is still going on now. The so-called socialist group of MPs are not doing their jobs. Why are they there? Why are we going out to get them elected when as soon as they get into Parliament, they become silent? Now let's try and understand why the leadership, our leadership, the people we fought so hard to get into place, why would they have done this? Now, you know, yes, they were protecting their own positions, and yes, they were hoping, as Tina said, that they might just get into Downing Street, and they mistakenly believed that accepting the accusations at face value, they believed that by sacrificing the members, by sacrificing people like me, they could, as John McDonnell say, draw a line. You remember that? How many times we were told, yes, but we've drawn a line now. Every concession, it fed the dogs. That's what you do when you feed hungry dogs. They come back for more. And that's what we saw in this shameful, tacit agreements they made with organizations who are politically opposed to everything that the left stands for, including telling the truth. These are the organizations now who, looking at what's happening in Gaza, are refuting the fact that this is genocide, that what is happening now is the functioning of an apartheid state. And the Labour Party is complicit with this. Now, by the time of my second suspension, of course, Jenny Formby was in fact General Secretary. I'm not going to go through the long issue. You see it online and hear the lies and hear the truth of what happened. But just to say, I complained about the way I was secretly filmed at a Jewish Labour movement training session, which was supposedly a closed session of conference. I named and had a witness of the JLM, the Jewish Labour Movement officer, who had taken that film. I complained to the Labour Party. No disciplinary action was taken. And now we see what happens. And it's a very nice sleight of hand. You only respond to complaints from one political side. I'll give you another example of that. As my health deteriorated, as the complaint against me was lengthened, my solicitors asked repeatedly and questioned the delay for my hearing. Now it becomes clear, it seems clear to me that the reasons for the delay in taking my hearing was to further discredit Corbyn and the leadership, and to ensure that whatever the evidence, that by time this sort of campaign of vilification made by MPs and the so-called great and not so good, by time they had had their way, actually finding me innocent, so to speak, would be impossible. Now, I contacted Labour officials to ask for them to restrain MPs from talking about my case so that I would get some semblance of justice. This was ignored. On the day of my hearing, let me just say something about that. There were 3 who were there listening for the tribunal. Then the Labour Party had 3 legal advisors and they had a few helpers. I also noted actually that the only Black person in the room, apart from me, guess what? Was taking the notes and making the tea, which tells you everything you need to know about the Labour Party. When I objected to a racist cartoon of me being in the Labour Party's pack of evidence, I asked them to remove it. They refused to remove that evidence. That is when I left the hearing. I was not going to have to give evidence while looking at racist renditions of me. This is the Labour Party as we know it. The fact that at that time, what also happened, and it didn't just happen to me, was that my file had got lost. My Labour Party file had got lost. Just shows you what a state, what a corrupt and deviant state this party was in. And I'm going to end, I know I'm going on a bit now, but I do want to say something about the Panorama programme, because you can imagine my response when I watched that, the documentary, the so-called documentary, where I was featured in quite a lot. I was featured in it, but I was given, of course, no comment, to be able to make no comment and no right of reply. And the first person I saw was a woman from the disciplinary unit who said in the film that she had interviewed me. Now, I thought this was really weird because I couldn't remember her at all until, of course, my solicitor said that she had actually been the person taking the notes. But the impression the documentary gave, of course, was that she had been very much in contact with me. So and she claimed, I'm just going to quote this in the programme, she claimed that I had said that Jews were unwelcoming to Black people in the Labour Party. So just take that on and then just remember that not only am I Jewish, but my partner is Jewish and I am a long-standing member of 2 Jewish organisations. Now these are the staff members, by the way, who got paid compensation against the legal advice of the party. So why didn't we complain more? Why didn't we complain more? I'm just coming to finish this up now. What we did at the start, but our complaints were repeatedly lost or treated in an injudicious manner. Ella Rose, for example, she began her career in the Israeli embassy, and then she had a stratospheric rise. Can't think why. Only in her 20s, she was made the national director of the Jewish labour movement. Now, she's better known to many for the part she played in Al Jazeera's film, The Lobby, when she was recorded threatening both me and a journalist. I was informed after complaints I and others had made that the Labour Party had decided to take no further action on her because she had been filmed covertly. The irony of that obviously hadn't struck them off. They just don't care. Ella Rose, by the way, if you want more irony, went on to have a place in the Joe Cox leadership course for women, which is of course based on protecting women from, you know, violence. And she's now the public affairs manager for the Holocaust Educational Trust. Dan Fox, the former director of Labour Friends of Israel, partner to the campaigner against online bullying of women, who was abusive about me online and was forced to apologise, but not to me, to the readers of the Daily Mail. A complaint I made to the Labour Party has never been responded to. And then there is, of course, Louise Ellman, the MP, who used her parliamentary privilege to slander me. And I actually contacted a leading figure in Corbyn's shadow cabinet to ask him to stop these MPs using their role to actually discredit me before the hearing. Nothing at all happened.
Can you wind up, please, Jackie?
Yeah. I'm just finally on the relationship between the Labour Party and the media. I don't believe there was ever a time when I found the outcome of a hearing before the media found it, i.e. the leaks to the media were occurring so quickly and so easily. I remember one time there was an NCC meeting about whether I was going to be expelled, and that was tweeted out by a reporter before all my solicitors knew, and before the meeting of the NCC had finished. This is the corruption of the Labour bureaucracy. This is the relationship between the Labour bureaucracy and the press. Now, the go-to in the media was always the initial go-to, the Jewish Chronicle and Jessica Elgott of The Guardian, who, of course, had been recently promoted from her first job at the Jewish Chronicle. This hand-in-glove relationship is a mark of the corruption of both institutions, of the media and our political systems and the Labour Party. Now, the thing we have to do is that we've got to take this on, understand what is happening, and we've got to come out still fighting. We want the Forde report. We want it now.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Thank you. Thank you to all our speakers. They will undoubtedly come back at the end of the meeting. We've got a number of people who actually, some people have put their hands up already, but we've also had a number of people who contacted us asking to speak. Is Kathy Bradley there? Kathy Bradley, who asked to speak?
Yes, I'm here.
Ah, hello. Hello, Kathy.
Hi.
Hello. Yes, so I'm afraid that our speakers have stolen a lot of our time by being so eloquent. But could you give us whatever you've got to say in 3 minutes sort of thing?
Well,
I know it's impossible, but please do.
Yeah, my stuff, I'm just really affected by what people have said about their personal impact and their stories, and ours isn't really on that level, but we focused on the 2017 and 2019 elections and how the Southeast region responded to candidates in the area, how they sabotaged socialist candidates in favour of the more right-wing candidates that were standing, directed activists to work for those right-wingers rather than in marginal seats such as Hastings and Rye, where activists were volunteering to go and work for Peter Chowney, were directed to Peter Kyle. Peter Chowney lost that seat by 341 votes in 2017, and Peter Kyle extended his majority to 18,000. So that's what was going on. Members in Canterbury offered to fund now South Thanet, who was struggling financially, and were told that that wasn't possible by South East region. South Thanet, North Thanet really struggled to get practical and financial help in their campaigns. They didn't have support for candidates who were new to the position, and it was an absolute travesty of what should have happened. Also, selection processes were anti-democratic. They were done in cobbled together meetings. They did not follow Labour Party rules about selection processes. People were imposed on branches. They went against what members wanted. I mean, this is common throughout the Labour Party. In certain branches were not allowed access to organise, so they couldn't reach their activists on the ground. Their whole campaign was stymied as a result. They downgraded targets. So that was our evidence to the Forde Inquiry in a nutshell. And finally, we said in the closing statement, local activists and candidates from across South East region worked hard under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership to win a Labour government. Staff in our regional office seriously failed us. They did not offer crucial support to our campaigns and at times actively undermined our efforts. The contents of the leaked report confirm our experience and have shocking implications for the Labour Party and its membership. And I believe that staffers in the Labour Party in South East region have worked hard to deprive this country of an effective opposition. We are effectively now a one-party state because right-wingers in the Labour Party prefer to oppose socialists than conservatives.
Thank you very much.
That's it.
I can vouch for Cathy, because Cathy, I mean, it's a huge submission the South East have made to Forde, and I have some experience of it as well, because Thanet is in the South East region, and you know, it's absolutely correct. That the most terrible travesties were committed in that area during the elections, and factionalism was rampant against the Corbyn supporting people. And it was completely and utterly, you know, the worst kind of sabotage and the most unfair practices going. I'm going to I've got here what I thought was a very interesting contribution that was sent in by somebody who can't be at the meeting, but it's Yvonne Davis, who's a former leader of Sandwell Council in the Midlands. She was the Labour leader. And she was suspended a while ago on what appears to be totally bogus allegations of anti-Semitism. She fought the case, and in the end, she resigned. But she sent in this statement, which I read. I'm particularly interested to read it out because this is not a person who you would qualify as being particularly on the hard left of the party. She says, "I am a 65-year-old woman who believes in right and wrong. I have a strong moral framework and I cannot look the other way when people are wrongly treated. I'm an honest and hard-working Labour member who speaks truth to power, and power doesn't like it at all." I should mention actually that she actually sent this submission to Forde. "I do not get involved in dirty tricks, malicious leaking, or spreading smears and lies. I think it's wrong and it demeans us all, as well as fundamentally undermining democracy itself. I thought at one time that it was the very ethos of the Labour Party, standing up for those who were discriminated against, treated badly, left out of provision, refusing to indulge in dirty tricks, maligning other reputations for political advancement, standing up for what's right. My politics are alleged to be left by Speller, that's John Speller, the MP, but in fact, I supported financially the leadership campaign of Owen Smith, believing Corbyn to be perhaps a nice guy, but not very good leader material. I view myself as a pragmatist, but one that puts people and tackling poverty and discrimination at its centre. I was staggered that the entire regional office, the national governance team, complaints, everyone was working for Tom Watson and John Speller. And it didn't matter what the truth was, what justice was, what fairness was. They would dictate the outcome of the election, and the, quotes, party machine would get right behind them. Labour leaks material absolutely illustrates what a cesspit of poison the heart of the party has become under the tenure of Watson and the cohort of wreckers. I didn't support Jeremy Corbyn for leader, but my God, what that man had to withstand from his own side was shameful. It was crystal clear that Hodge, Mann, Austin, Watson, Speller would never accept Corbyn's leadership, despite the overwhelming support of members of the party. There should be no place in our party for those who invest more in tearing the house down than they invest in ensuring a Labour government. People say the leaks are tittle-tattle, never meant to see the light of day, but private musings meant light-heartedly. They are wrong. They absolutely shine a torch into the soul of our party. They illustrate that cruel jokes, racist overtones, the piling on of worn-down colleagues and deliberately leaking to damage others was the ethos that directed this party at the very top. Shame on them.
Thanks, Norman. John Davis is trying to speak about Liverpool Riverside. I've tried to send you messages, but I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, no, okay. Well, John, speak to us.
Oh, I think he's gone now. Are you still there, John? He seems to have gone now. Sorry. Sorry, Norman, you're muted.
Right, we've got quite a few people already backing up, people who've put in requests to speak. I've got Reva Bird. Is Reva Bird there who wants to talk about the Riverside episode?
Yes, I'm here, Norman.
Okay, hello.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Speak. 3 minutes, please.
Yes, it's just that because of the awful mess that the member for Riverside made with regards to what was going on in that constituency, the Labour Party launched an investigation to see if they could sort out what was going on in Riverside. So they sent up an investigator, and he conducted a number of interviews of leading activists in that constituency, and I acted as a silent witness to one of those comrades. And we were interviewed by the chap who was sent up from party, who interviewed all of those comrades. Just to say that what I sent to Forde was that what was said in the Panorama programme, highlighted by this chap who was the interviewer, was he told a downright lie. It was introduced by John Ware, this part of the broadcast, that the chap sent up to do the investigation was confronted by the very anti-Semitism that he'd been sent to investigate. And so in the interview in the studio with John Ware, this staffing member told a downright lie as to what transpired in the interview where I was a silent friend of the comrade being interviewed from Riverside. And so it annoyed me greatly because I have got transcripts and recorded evidence, and it's been encapsulated by the Canary organisation. And as you know, Norman, I've sent all the links to you. So if anybody wants to see what I'm talking about, I've got incontrovertible evidence that the financial settlement and the apology that was agreed between the party and that group of former Labour Party staff members is based on a downright lie. And that greatly rankles with me because, as I say, one of the highlights of the Panorama programme was this particular staffer telling a downright lie against what happened in the interview that we have got a recording of, and John Davis, that comrade in Riverside, has been helping me enormously to keep hold of the evidence, which is incontrovertible, that we've got that particular part of that investigation into the Riverside and the consequent settlement that the party did, paying loads and loads of money to those people who were named as so-called whistleblowers against the leaked report, is based on a lie.
Thank you very much for that.
Sorry,
Maybe...
Norman, we've actually found John Davis, if you want to.
Okay, I'll hand over to you in a second, John. I'm just going to say that arising out of what Reva's mentioned is that maybe one of the things that we should be doing following this meeting is setting up a website where this information, and from many other people, I know which we've got basically lots of other people have been submitting material, that in the absence of Forde reporting yet, maybe then we will have a website which will become the central online point for the material, which is the evidence, the overwhelming evidence of the terrible things that have happened inside the Labour Party. John, over to you.
Yeah, just to briefly follow on, firstly, from what Rika was saying about the spurious investigation into Riverside, I can just corroborate what she said about how the recording proves he lied in that programme. But he also misrepresented the nature of the investigation when he came up here. He was all kind of sweetness and like, we just want people to get together and unite the CLP. And of course, on the programme, he rather pompously was claiming that this was a nest of serious anti-Semitism. It was a huge problem, and we had to go up there and do something about it. He was actually misrepresenting what his purpose was. He'd already decided that there were anti-Semites in our CLP. I just wanted to say a couple of other things if I can. Kevin Bean, I think you misspoke slightly when you said there wasn't any anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and I know you don't believe that. But what is clear from these very moving testimonies from a number of people that I know personally, but a number of other people, the cost in family, in health, and in all sorts of other ways, that this corrupt organisation has landed on a lot of us. And I completely agree with the characterizations that Greg and Chris and Jackie and others have described. But what conclusion do we draw? Norman, you said it's our Labour Party. Now, I understand those sentiments, and I can understand the anger that drives people to say that. But we had the best circumstances we've ever had in the Labour Party to turn it into a genuinely socialist party. And we were unable to do so because it has a completely endemically corrupt structure. I don't think it's possible to transform that. And what I would like to see is for the various disparate groups at the moment that are trying to maintain the movement that was around Corbyn, I would like to see those come together. And I think it has to be outside the Labour Party. I think we need a new grassroots. I don't think, to use Greg's phrase, we can stop it somehow. We need to start again.
Thank you very much for that. I think my attitude is that we stay and fight, but I know that this debate will go on. I want to just basically ask a question to the panel that somebody sent in. Hilary Wise, who I believe is from Ealing and Acton Central CLP. She says, we have a local, powerful and very pro-Lex complainant who has got a lot of us suspended in his borough. What can we do to unmask him? SARS, statutory access requests, etc., get nowhere. So maybe when we come back to the panel, we'll find somebody who might have a go at answering her question. Let me see. I think Tony Greenstein was one of the first people to put his hand up. Tony, 3 minutes. You're muted, Tony. Also not really looking at the camera.
Tony, I keep sending you messages to unmute.
Yeah, I couldn't unmute, unfortunately. Okay. I wasn't allowed to. Okay, I mean, I agree with Tina that the worst thing we can do is have a cult of personality around Jeremy Corbyn. We have to draw a balance sheet, not least because if the left is ever to regain the leadership at some time in the future, it needs to know where it's got wrong in the past. And for me, the major mistake was the appeasement of the right from the very start. I was suspended in March 2016. In February 2018, I was expelled. I was the first Jewish person to be expelled. And if you go to the leaked report, page 306, you read this. Jeremy Corbyn himself and members of his staff requested to the GLU that particular anti-Semitism cases be dealt with. In 2017, Lotto staff chased, that's leads of the opposition office, staff chased for action and the high-profile anti-Semitism cases, Ken Livingstone, Tony Greenstein, Jackie Walker and Mark Wadsworth, stressing that these cases were of great concern to Jewish stakeholders and that resolving them was essential to, quote, rebuilding trust between the Labour Party and the Jewish community, unquote. Well, we were expelled or forced out, and was trust rebuilt? No, of course not. They simply came back with a list of new demands for more people to be expelled and to be suspended. And so it went on. And what they didn't understand was the more people you suspended and the more people you expelled, the more you proved the narrative of anti-Semitism was actually correct. They were actually stabbing themselves in the back. And then you had this denialism. Basically, if you denied that there was an anti-Semitism problem, it proved you were guilty. You know, it's like going to court and the court asks you, how do you plead? And you say innocent, and then the judge says, well, that's proof that you're guilty. I mean, it's an absolute absurdity, but we can see today with the attack on Gaza, the New York Times last week printed 67 photographs of Palestinian children who were killed, murdered by the Israeli state. And what was the response of Abraham Foxman of the Anti-Defamation League? He said this was a blood libel. Now, for those who don't know, blood libel was in the Middle Ages when Jews were alleged to have baked their unleavened bread, matzo, in Gentile, non-Jewish children's blood. It was obviously a fantasy, was obviously a lie, but thousands of people died. But the murder of Gazan children was not a lie, it happened. And this is exactly how anti-Semitism has been weaponized. Yes, the fact that they were Jewish, the Zionists, it was immaterial. They were liars. They deliberately weaponized anti-Semitism. And yet people were reticent and afraid and intimidated about calling that out. And that was, if you like, the real problem. Now, of course, there were anti-Semites in the Labour Party. There were paedophiles in the Labour Party. Statistically, there had to be 500,000 people. But that didn't mean the Labour Party was overrun by anti-Semites. And actually, if you go back, the worst anti-Semite was during the war, Herbert Morrison, Home Secretary under the coalition government. He kept out 2,000 French, Jewish children and old people from coming into this country from Vichy, France. The result was they were deported to Auschwitz. The Labour rights anti-Semitism actually killed people, but the border deputies never ever spoke up once. And who makes these accusations? The Jewish Labour Movement. But the Jewish Labour Movement says that the Israeli Labour Party is their sister party. They've just gone into government with 3 far-right parties, one of which is led by Avigdor Lieberman of Yisrael Beitenu. And he's come out with a whole series of racist comments, including that he would like to drown thousands of Palestinian prisoners in the Dead Sea, which is the lowest point on earth. So no one should tell us that this anti-Semitism nonsense has any credibility. It's the Jewish Labour Movement, allied to the Israeli Labour Party, which ethnically cleansed 750,000 Palestinians, which is the par example of racism in the party. And the reality was that those who attacked us for anti-Semitism were themselves guilty of racism. Tom Watson, who demonized asylum seekers, for example.
Could you wind up, Tony?
Yes, I'm sorry, I've gone on. But all I would say, to reiterate, is we have to draw a balance sheet, because if we don't draw a balance sheet, we will never ever rebuild what we had under Corbyn. And that means being able to criticise Corbyn as well as accept that he had his good points as well as his bad points. Thank you. And I hope people come tomorrow to the Labour Campaign for Free Speech meeting with Ilan Pape, Salma Yaqub, and Norman Finkelstein, because I think it will be a very good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Norman, sorry, Chair. We've got Jamie Bramwell now with us, the former NEC member. Can we bring him in?
Do you mean Jamie Newell?
Bramwell is actually his last name.
I was given his name. Okay, we'll take him, and then we'll go to Terry Dean. So yeah. Okay.
Hello, everybody. I was speaking to. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, everything okay?
Yeah.
I messaged Chris Williamson the other day about some of the things that have happened during. I was on the NEC from 2015 to 2017, representing the construction sector through UCAT before we merged with Unite, and I was on the national executive. Obviously, the very start of Jeremy's reign as the leader. And what I found was, obviously, there's a number of things which we all know what was going on, but I put a subject access request in because some of the things which didn't actually sit right to me, and this is what I'd like to bring to this meeting was, I played the 24th on the day of Jeremy on the coup. When the coup was about to happen, I rang Ian McNichol and said, look, I'm playing a 24-hour football charity match on the Tuesday. Can we not postpone this meeting? Because there's no rush. To me, there didn't seem like there was some kind of rush. And I know that there's a number of people that aren't going to be able to make the Tuesday meeting. So anyway, I ended up having to postpone the 24-hour football match. I actually, on the day of that meeting, which I was obviously committed to Jeremy and making sure that he remained on the ballot paper, I went to London, went to the executive, did my vote, made sure we voted for Jeremy to be on the ballot paper. And then I left at about 9 o'clock to get the last train to Birmingham to play a 12-hour football match till 7 o'clock the following morning. It was at that point when I got a phone call at the train station in Birmingham that I got a phone call from one of my comrades, Jim Kennedy, who said they've had a vote over they pulled it out, wasn't on the agenda, and this is one of my biggest. I felt regretful, but I had no hotel booked. I had nothing else. I had to get away from London, otherwise I was snookered. When they pulled out the bag, Ian McNichol and I guess Stolliday and the rest of them pulled out the bag. This vote for for increasing the fees for the vote. So, and it's one of the worst things. One of the things that I was an NEC member and I was committed and I was always there, but I was told that meeting had finished, except when I'd left, he pulled the spin. And obviously Jeremy had left the room as well and others had left the room. But on that, I've got a subject access request. And in the emails on the Friday, it says, ha, 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 ha. Jamie won't be here on the Tuesday. So they were subverting democracy. They didn't want us there. They were planning, and they knew that Andy Fox and my brain's gone blank. Couldn't make it. They were on holiday. This is the right wing of our party. This is the right wing, and I'm disgusted. I've literally kind of took myself away from it because in the leaked report, and I've sent the stuff I've sent all this information to the Forde Inquiry. In the leaked report, there was one time, and you'll all remember when Owen Smith called Jeremy a lunatic, and I wrote to the NEC, said that's not the language of our party. Why would we be calling anybody a lunatic? I've got friends who I've lost friends through suicide. I have got friends who suffer with mental health. Why would Owen Smith be okay to use the language of a lunatic? And I got a message off Ian McNichol, or he rang me and he said, Owen Smith wants to speak to you. I said, I don't want to speak to Owen Smith. I want him to apologise for the language that he's using. Well, all that was in the subject access request. And if you remember, if you look into the leaked documents, it talks about John McDonnell. I was filming John McDonnell at the Liverpool, at a place in Liverpool on the 28th of April. And the reason I know it was me is because my wife's birthday was the 29th and we went out for something to eat with my kids. And they were calling us lunatics. Lunatics for wanting to challenge and tax those who earn and tax the richest. Oh, we were taxed everybody, and that's all in the document. So I spoke to Chris Williamson, I've sent him the emails that I received, and I'm disgusted, absolutely disgusted. I wrote to the Forde. I put my submission to the Forde Inquiry. I gave all of my honest. I've got no reason to lie. I'm not interested in trying to blame the right or the left. I've always got along with those on the right and those on the left. I've always been somebody, we take your politics away and we'll have a conversation about whatever it is, whatever colour of the day, whether it be football or music or whatever. But the politics, my politics may differ to somebody else, but I've never been abusive. And you know what I found? And I found over the period of time being part of it was I'd rather someone be rude to me so I know where you stand. Okay. Than hide behind what they wear. And some of them staffers, I bought them chocolates for Christmas. I was always nice. To attack me and others, and I found that in the emails was absolutely disgusting. But yeah, I spoke to Chris, as I said, I spoke to Chris, and I just wanted to, I seen this that was being advertised, and I just wanted to say, everybody's right. The Forde Inquiry needs to come out so that everybody else can actually see what the disgusting behaviour by people who supposedly call themselves working representatives of our class.
Thanks very much for that, Jamie. Unfortunately, in my personal opinion, you've just probably described why Forde will never see the light of day, because I think Martin Forde is too honourable a man to censor his report under the Labour Party will never release or publish the sorts of things that you've just basically talked about.
Well, you can all have my copies of my subject access request, and you can read it till you're blue in the face.
Send it to us. Send it to us. But thank you very much for contributing. I think we'll go on to Terry Deans. We need to finish up quite soon, but Terry Deans, speak to us.
Yeah, thank you, Norman. Thank you for letting me speak. I'd just like to say before I start, thanks to the organisers of Labour in Exile Network for organising this event tonight, and the fantastic speakers and all the people who've taken up the time on a Saturday evening to come along to attend this. This is a Forde Inquiry, not the Forde Inquiry, because some people have been saying, like, why haven't we done some more, going forward, what are we going to do about it? Well, we're coming to that. I'm going to make reference to that in a second. Martin Forde has had a year with a team helping him day in, day out, 24/7 to get this ready. The LIEN members have put this together in a few days. So I think like a couple of hours into I think we've done pretty well so far. So we'll get on to what we're going to do about it. I'm quite a new member. I joined the Labour Party as inspired by Corbyn in 2015. I'm born and raised in Northern Ireland. I've been during the Troubles. I fought in the Falklands War in 1982 for the Royal Navy in the Falklands War. And I understand a little bit about the brutality of the British Empire and the imperialism and how they disappeared in Northern Ireland, etc., etc. And I know how evil these people can be. And to me, the British Labour Party has always been a major arm of that. So it's no surprise to me. I hear people sort of breaking their hearts tonight. I can understand why. But for me, it's no real surprise. You know, here we are, we're making history here. We're fighting against a regime and a system which has never been challenged in the way it has been ever before. People can correct me if I'm wrong. I've never seen it anyway. So just getting back to myself here. Well, before I get to me, the pain and the trauma that's been suffered by people, I've described the Labour Party, my experience in the Labour Party, as being like a victim of an abusive relationship. There's people outside, there's people in this party speaking here tonight and watching this programme who are saying, we're never going to come back to the Labour Party, we're leaving, let's start a new party. Totally understandable when you've been treated despicably with the toxicity which has been meted down through to people in this Labour Party. Absolutely disgraceful. But we're dealing with a bunch of evil psychopaths, narcissists who don't care about you, they don't care about how you feel, and they would rather see you crumble and die in a heap of shit on the ground than maybe even win an election with a socialist agenda. So that's my opinion. So I think those people deserve our support, and we should do our utmost. We're supposed to be socialists. I never knew I was a socialist until about 5 years ago. Okay, so I've now been labelled a socialist. Fine, I'm happy with that. I see that as people who look after our own. We look after our own. We keep an eye on each other, and we pick each other up when we're down. So our comrades who are bruised and battered and bleeding on the floor, we need to help those people, okay, and maybe keep them together. I got assaulted. This is my submission to this Forde report. I got assaulted in the Labour Party office for having the audacity of organising a street stall in Plymouth city centre. My assault by a Labour councillor was witnessed by Luke Pollard, who was a parliamentary candidate in Plymouth, Sutton and Devonport at the time, who is now an MP. And he grabbed me by the shoulders, and I said to him, why are you doing that, Luke? And he said, because I thought you were going to retaliate. So he knew that I'd been attacked. He knew that there was grounds for me being attacked. But when I put that complaint through to the disciplinary, I think there's a gentleman called Sam Matthews, his sidekick Sophie Goodyear, who were there at the time, and I rang them up. I rang Sam Matthews up, and Sam Matthews told me over the phone that they had decided there was no grounds for my complaint. I'd been assaulted by someone. You know, my word against theirs, but surely you would think an assault would warrant some kind of a hearing. But apparently him and Sophie Goodyear across the desk had decided there was no case to answer for. But he did advise me to go to the police if I thought there was an assault. So it's a bit of a weird thing. I also got kicked off the parliamentary candidacy. Chris Williamson talked about prospective parliamentary hustings in 2019. God forbid, who would have known after 4 years of being in the Labour Party I'd be standing as a possible parliamentary candidate after never having voted in my life before until 2017. Goodness me. But I was hounded out of that along with one or two other comrades the night before. So it was despicable. I haven't got time to go into all the details. I then subsequently got suspended, punitively suspended, investigated by the Labour Party, and told that my behaviour was so bad that it didn't warrant a hearing. However, as my behaviour was so bad it didn't warrant a hearing, I was only punitively suspended. Why wasn't I expelled if it was so horrendous? I didn't warrant a hearing. It's ridiculous. It's unbelievable what's going on in the Labour Party. But I'd just like to say something else. That all sounds really bad, but I absolutely love being here. I never thought I was going to live my life to get an opportunity to do what I'm doing. I'm really pleased. I've loved this fight. I saw Chris Williamson, I heard Chris Williamson talk about how it damaged him. It damaged me as well for a couple of weeks. And I thought, do you know what? There's a gentleman called Jeremy Corbyn who gave me and hundreds of thousands of other people the opportunity to do something that we never ever thought would ever happen in our lives. And I, for one, am never ever going to forget that. And I'm going to repay it until I take my dying breath. And I'm going to repay that man for that in whatever I do. He's made mistakes. People said he made mistakes. Of course he's made mistakes. I've made mistakes. We all make mistakes. We're facing the brutality of the British establishment here, guys. Let's get real here, as somebody mentioned earlier on. This is who we're up against. So I'm enjoying this battle. I'm glad I'm here, because for 40 years of my adult life, I never thought it was ever going to happen. And the reason why it's hard is because we're fighting a historic battle to change politics in this country. So just to finish off, people are saying, what's going to happen next? Well, this is what I'm going to do, and people are joining me. LIEN have agreed and decided to organise shadow CLPs. We want to give a home for people who have been expelled, suspended, members of the party, people who have been disillusioned, people who think that the men melt away and never see the light of day because of the trauma and the pain that they've been caused. Well, we're going to put together shadow CLPs. The first workshop is next Saturday, which I'll be hosting with several other people. And we're going to give people a home to come to. Whether you stay in the party or whether you do something else, is to keep the members together, the ex-members together, to keep the solidarity, which I keep hearing. I keep being told about comrade, solidarity, unity. So I'm going to exemplify that, and other people are going to join me in doing that. And when the time comes that we're fit again to fight these so-and-sos back again, we're going to do it. And I will never, ever give up. And I'd like other people to join me in that. So solidarity, comrades, I mean it. Unity, let's fight back. If you stay in the party, fine. If you don't, there's still ways of doing it. And come to the workshop next week. It's on the LAM page. We'll bash our ideas about how to do it. It's already being done. Thank you, Norman, for letting me speak, and good luck to everybody.
Thank you, Terry. I'm afraid that the time has kind of run out on us. We need to go back to the speakers to give their last words. We've got loads of people who wanted to speak, and we've got lots of messages coming in, and other people who'd asked to speak in advance. What it goes to show is that we must have and not the Forde Inquiry Part 2, and we must have something that basically looks at some of the detailed information that's coming in from people. But I'm now we need to wind up the meeting. We've gone over 2 hours already. So let's go back to our speakers and see if any of them would like to speak up and give us the last couple of words. So let's start. We may as well go in same order. Graham Bash, have you got any last words?
Yes, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, what a great meeting. Congratulations to everybody who organised this. I think that the last speaker, Terry Dean, said it all. I love this fight. We never, never give up. And what we've got to remember is this, that there is outside, there's a class struggle, and it's going to increase and develop. And outside, there is a movement to save our planet. There's a movement for Black Lives Matter. There's a movement for Palestine. And whatever else we do, we must maintain that connection, because this is our base. This is the force, and actually the only force, that and the rest of the trade union movement. It's the only force that can transform and the world and save our planet. I think that will need a political expression, and I still think that we should be fighting in the party. But that is the central question, is that we must never allow our membership of the party to divide us, to separate us from those forces of class struggle, the only forces globally that can save our planet. Thank you, comrades, a great meeting.
Thank you very much, Graham. I've just realised that if we ask every speaker to have some last words, we'll be far too long, even longer over our 9 o'clock finishing time. Is there anyone else of the speakers who wants to say a last word? Jackie?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, yeah, it's a great meeting and all that, but we need to see this as part of a process. And wouldn't it be great if at the heart of the beast, at the Labour Party conference in Brighton, we could put up an exhibition in where we're going to be, just a few of the choicest things, submissions from the Forde report. And if we actually had perhaps a few books with the paper that people could read, and we actually started to think about this as something that every time we see a journalist in Brighton, we put it in their hand. That's what we go, and we actually make it something quite practically based. So not the kind of rhetoric that we often go with, but this is the Forde report. This is what's happening. What do you think of it?
Thanks very much. Thank you very much for that, Jackie. So is anyone else want to say a word? Chris Williamson, have you got a last word for us?
Very briefly, yeah. I mean, what I would say is, look, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and I agree with what Graham was saying about the importance of us keeping going. And we are building momentum. There's no doubt about that. I mean, look how many people have joined this meeting this evening. I know it's difficult, and Jeremy once said it's not called the struggle for nothing, but let me just leave you with and just remember, as I say, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. Just think of the struggle, think of the trials and tribulations that the pioneers of the Labour movement went through. We're not going to be transported, not yet anyway, to a penal colony for talking in the way in which we've been talking. So let's honour their memory by standing together in solidarity and fighting back. And we are strong. And those people that were inspired by Jeremy, they haven't disappeared into the ether. They're still there. And it's our job to bring people together and to recapture that momentum, that enthusiasm, which actually, you know, nearly swept Jeremy and a socialist reforming anti-imperialist government to power. And, you know, whether we do it inside or outside the Labour Party, the important thing is that we work together in unison. And remember that Labour movement maxim that unity is strength. And let me just leave you with the words of Tony Benn when he said there are two flames that burn in the human heart, the flame of anger against injustice, and there's plenty of injustice around at the moment, and the flame of hope that we can build a better world. And we can build that better world, comrade. We've just got to be sort of determined and relentless, and we'll get there.
Thank you very much, Chris. That's very strong words. If you want to know what's coming next, there's, I think, as Tony Greenstein said, there's a meeting of the with Norman Finkelstein and other very important speakers about free speech in Palestine tomorrow. But if you want to just get the latest information on all the things, including what action is going to be planned to, direct action is going to happen in July, and the Resist event that's going to happen at the Labour Party conference, and all the events, all the fight back, because that's what we've got to do, is have a fight back, in my opinion, that we've got to keep the show on the road. And look at the Labour in Exile Network website. All the information that's happening, as it's happening, will be coming out soon. And on the Facebook page for the Labour in Exile Network here. My partner, Christine Tang's here, and basically she always makes me remember all the things I've forgotten. But thank you very much for coming, and I hope that we will see you again at the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Norman. Can I just say we had 800 people register and almost 500 in the meeting. Actually, we had over 500 in the meeting as people came and went. So this is bloody fantastic turnout. Says something, doesn't it?
That's great.